What's up, YouTubers? Here in Mississippi, it's been cold all week. Work's been closed because we don't know how to drive or act when we get snow or ice. So we've all been stuck in single digits in the morning time and been able to get out in the shop and do a little bit. So you can see behind me there on the lift is 48 CJ2A that I've been working on real slowly, and there's the frame behind me. We'll look at that in a minute. But today I just want to talk about making a drive shaft. So a lot of you may not have wanted to tackle that in the past, and there's not a whole lot to it, especially if you're building something on for a slow moving vehicle that you're going to rock crawl in. And like I said, not go too fast, but there are ways to balance the drive shaft pretty closely without having a lathe and all of the quote-unquote proper equipment. So I'll flip it around. This is just the way that I do it. It's, again, pretty simple. There's the old tube. This is the front drive shaft, original drive shaft tube out of the CJ2A. And really simple. These here on the yoke, there's a weld. And you just cut that yoke. I cut it with a cutoff wheel on my grinder. Makes a thin kerf, and you can kind of feel it. You rotate it around until you're down far enough, and then you can hammer here on the yoke, and the yoke will come out. So there's what's left. You can see where I cut it on both ends. Cut it out. Cut the splined piece out. And then slide it back into your new piece of tubing. Obviously, this new piece of tubing is a lot thicker. It's 1.5 inches, 250 wall DOM, because it's what I had on hand, and that's what happened to fit my weld yoke and my splined end. I use this very crude jig to turn so I can weld. I would turn with my left hand, weld with the right, or vice versa. You can see that's all that I have left is to weld here. And what I'll do is put in a couple of tack welds on either side, and then I'll go put it under the Jeep, bolt it up. That shaft that's on the table is the front drive shaft. So I would bolt it up here, jack up the front end, and roll the tires around, and then you can see how bad out around your shaft is. And if you have a dial indicator, for example, you could stick it on the engine block and then use the indicator to tell you how out of round the shaft is. And then with the hammer, you just tap the drive shaft since you've only got a couple of small tack welds on it, and you can get it pretty close to being in balance, at least good enough for something like this old CJ2A with 60 horsepower from the factory and top speeds 55 miles an hour.